Well, welcome to our March Town Hall. We have a very special guest today. Jamie Mangrum is here. He is the Deputy Director Chief of Data Systems. Jamie, did I get that right? Close enough, IT. Smartest IT man I know. Actually follows through and does what he says he's going to do today. And an excellent presenter. I do have to share a few things before we get started, though. You can't hear? Closer. How is that? Okay, thank you. Let me find my glasses and we'll keep going. A couple of announcements and some good news today. Strategic planning was held on Monday, and I was very pleased to see more than 100 staff in attendance. I think it was very positive. And to all of you who did attend, thank you very much for your willingness to participate, taking the time out of your day because it was lengthy, your openness. And I have to share again that Sacramento folks were continuing to be really impressed with all the creative, smart thinking that goes on here. So I appreciate that. Remember, for those of you who couldn't attend, we still want to hear your ideas and we still want your feedback. So even if you couldn't make it this time, send us an email. I'd appreciate it. I have a couple of quick recognitions to do. Program 3 was recognizing 3 employees this month. Steve Reimel, Senior PT. Are you here, Steve? Okay. Steve is recognized for his demonstrated exceptional leadership as the Unit 15 AM shift lead. He has been instrumental in implementing several performance improvement processes, which have resulted in exceptional delivery of clinical and nursing services to our patients. Steve's professionalism, service, dependability, and teamwork are a model for all staff. Yay, Steve. Flora Chang, RN, graciously accepted an acting HSS position for the program. Flora went above and beyond to help the units and her peers to be aware of medical issues by sharing valuable information and patient status and ensuring good documentations in the charts. Her excellent attitude and experience went a long way to ensure good nursing care. So, Flora, are you here? We appreciate you anyway. Thank you. And Lavinder Bagwal, are you here? No, he's working on Program 5 now, but Program 3 wants to wish you luck, and they miss your helpfulness and great attitude. You're a team player all the way. So. An executive team wants to thank a few people. You know, last month I talked to you about the transfer of 35 1370s from Patton and Napa, that we were going to try a transfer process rather than going through a full admission process. And that turned out to be much more complex than we thought. It involved a lot of staff, but I need to really recognize staff on Program 1, HIMD, DPS, and Forensic Services, as well as Standards, for taking some extra steps to try and clean it up as we still move along to admit those 35. So thank you all very much for that. And I'm thinking for now, we may not experiment with this process for a while. It didn't work quite like we thought. Okay, we also need to extend appreciation to Kathy Miller and all of the RNs who provided a very meaningful psych rotation to the student nurses from Cuesta College. So I know we're recruiting a few. It's a lot of extra work, but the couple of student nurses I talked to said it was a very positive experience, and they wouldn't mind working here, so that's a good thing. So thank you. And we have a late add-on. Unit 6 had a patient experiencing a seizure last night. Dr. Shelton and the NOD staff want to send their appreciation for the very fast response and action to help this patient whose oxygen levels had reached critical mass. So your application of oxygen was very timely. So great work, Unit 6. And then I just got a wonderful reminder copy from a social worker the other day of why we really work here. This is going to be coming out in the family newsletter article, and it is a letter from parents of one of our patients. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it made me feel good about what we do, and we need to feel that more often. So, we have suffered through legal issues, jails, and prisons with our son. We watched our young boy grow and thrive with great excitement. Once in high school, although an honor student, we watched him start slipping away, tormented by demons we did not understand. On the 11th hour, our son was released from prison to Atascadero State Hospital. There he was given treatment we could not find on the outside. He was deemed the most hostile patient at one time, which pained us as parents. How can this be? He was such a happy and considerate young man. The hospital staff has given our son the tools to deal with his mental illness. He is now on the correct medications. He has gone to group meetings and classes. He's been on several units in the past 2 years. So it goes on to talk about more situations, but what they really are giving you is very heartfelt thanks for sometimes, and we've talked about this before, the very difficult work you do that's often unappreciated, because as Colleen Love once said, these guys are someone's son, someone's father, someone's brother, and that's true. So it does make a difference to the outside world. And that's it for good news for the moment. I do need to introduce someone. Alice Lee, did you get past security yet? Go ahead and stand up. Several people have asked me who this person is wandering our halls once a week. This is Alice Lee. She's our assigned attorney from Sacramento. She's here once a week, and she provides consultation. And she's the person we go to when we have quick questions that need to be answered. And she's doing that admirably. So welcome, Alice. Okay, without any delay, I'm going to introduce Jamie Mangrum, who's going to give us a presentation that involves the future of the electronic health record and what we need to do to get there. So, Jamie?
The head of IT, and I can't log into the workstation. Thanks. So I'm Jamie Mangrum. I'm the Deputy Director for the department that's over technology. I've been a Chief Information Officer for different organizations in the state. I worked for the federal receiver at the prisons for about 3.5 years as their CIO. I worked as the agency information officer for CDCR. So I've been in similar types of organizations, definitely organizations that have the same types of issues and problems to solve when it comes to things like technology. Linda and I, when we meet regularly with our bosses, are given this new direction and challenge to have our hospitals start to come together and function as a system. And I don't mean system as in technology system. It's more of functioning as, a single hospital organization. So just like CDCR, CDCR over the years developed information technology environments and operations for each prison. They were all standalone little kind of like, I always kind of visualize them as a fort, with armed guards on the wall. And we're maybe not necessarily with armed guards on the wall, but kind of the same way. I am given the direction basically to bring you modern technology. And there's an analogy that I've been using quite a bit recently where I describe us as each of our 8 locations is kind of like somehow we built a neighborhood of houses, 8 houses. And we built that neighborhood without putting in the roads, without putting in the necessary electrical infrastructure, without putting in the sewerage and things like that. And then the families moved in and they developed inside of their houses. But we've not come back then and ever put that necessary infrastructure in place. That is a very good description of where we are right now as a department. And the reason I say this is I'm constantly bombarded with a question of, when are we going to get electronic medical record? Why aren't you just going and getting what the VA is doing? And if we're not going to get that, just tell us what we're going to get and when. So the answer is, and I apologize for making this statement, we're not ready. We are currently right now that neighborhood that I described. To get a project like that funded and approved at the state level, the only way that they're going to ever approve something like that is if we can demonstrate that we're functioning as a department system, hospital system. I tell the hospitals when I visit that the only way a single hospital would get their own implementation of an electronic health record that's configured specifically to them, the way that they function today, is all the other hospitals have to close, let the employees go, let the patients go, and then Atascadero is then the last hospital that's left standing. And then that's the only way that I would be able to roll out an electronic health record to you all in that, that manner. So that being said, if, let's say I went to a large metropolitan area like Los Angeles and I said, give me the yellow pages, and I randomly pick 5 different large inpatient hospitals, different corporate ownership, and I go to them and I say, tomorrow I'm coming to you and I'm going to roll out a single EHR. I know you all operate differently, but you're just going to have to change your business processes as I roll out the technology. I mean, does anybody believe that that would be a successful project or something that I should undertake? Okay, so I agree. I am constantly, I have people that'll come to me and they'll say, the state constantly fails, in rolling out large technology projects. The reality is everybody fails rolling out large technology projects. It's one of the most difficult things that you can possibly try to undertake. I have a very different view of why I think people fail doing things like that. Everybody tries to blame it on the procurement process or the vendors, and I think that that does play a role, but I actually think that we play the most significant role in that. And what I mean by that is I constantly have seen in state service how we will try to fix broken business process by forcing technology on staff. So we say, technology, it's the silver bullet. It'll fix everything. Here, we'll just roll out this new technology system and it'll fix all that. And so, then you're charged with rolling out a technology where people are somewhat working in a very disparate, kind of dysfunctional manner. They're going to be very, hostile in you rolling something like this out. Technology, when you roll out a large-scale project, most IT people focus on the rolling out of the technical widgets. I've learned over the years, and it is kind of my area of expertise, rolling out large-scale projects, that it's about 5% technology and it's about 95% people. And there's a really good example inside of our own environment. I've been the last year or so very focused on Napa, rolling out the duress alarm project. As a CIO who is supposed to be a technologist, but as you saw, I couldn't even log on to a workstation, so that's somewhat questionable. I never claimed to be a techie, but there I know far more about lanyards, tensile strength of fabric. I spend far more time with union leaders than my own daughter and people like that, and so on. Now we have successfully rolled it out, but even to this day, we're dealing with the human perception of, well, 4 or 5 months ago, there were stability issues and so on. And that's still kind of the reality that's in people's minds. And we're trying to kind of bring people along where they have far more confidence. And it just takes time, and so on. But these are not technology issues or problems. These are basically, something the Department of State Hospitals Mental Health should be very used to dealing with. It's basically, how do we as human beings change how we do what we do on a regular basis? I don't know about you all, but I am very set in my ways, although I kind of give the illusion that I'm very adaptive. If you change anything, like trying to take away my cell phone and other umbilical cords, I react in a bad way. So I'm kind of just like everybody. I have my areas of comfort. So that's kind of a description of where we are. What I wanted to do today is not bore you with PowerPoint slides, God bless you, but I am going to walk you through some, and they'll explain what we're doing, and then I want to spend some time talking about your part of this and what you need to start doing so you as a hospital are ready and positioned where we've got probably the best chance of being successful rolling out an electronic health record, rolling out document management to you, rolling out, pharmacy, laboratory, radiology technologies, and so on. And, using mobile PCs, we are not held to using a desktop computer, where for the very first time, you can actually have technology at point of care, where you're standing in front of a patient, and then I know we're not supposed to do this, but I know this is common practice, where we have the communal workstation that some sacrificial person logs in at the beginning of the shift, and that's who everybody else is using profile. Please don't admit to me that you're doing that. I am in charge of information security, and I already know that we do that across the board, and I kind of turn a blind eye because we have to run our business. But I'm looking for solutions to implement that will make it far easier to do your job, but it eliminates problems, like that. So this slide kind of describes all the things that we're doing right now that build out that neighborhood, build out the necessary infrastructure for us to roll out technology. Ironically, and I don't know why they did this, but for some reason they actually now have put into state law that we're supposed to eliminate our data center space that we have out in each of our locations. They didn't write this law specifically for DSH. It was for the entire state, but it does impact us. On an annual basis, they ask me to admit to them how much square footage we've reduced by, and every year I basically say 0, and then I have to spend the next 2 or 3 hours explaining to them why, and to be patient, and someday we'll actually get to that point. So the bottom of this is a centrally managed employee directory. I'm not using technology descriptions at this point. I'm using descriptions for the projects where they'll kind of make sense to non-technology people. When you log into your computer, when you access any system like WORMS, it doesn't matter. You're logging in and using the credentials of an employee directory. It's an electronic directory. We have 8 of those. Different individuals that travel around the state a lot, like me, are constantly complaining to me, how come when I go to this location, I try to log in, access my files in print and things like that, and I can't? And they don't understand that that's why. So we're working very quickly over the next year to set up a single directory that will allow us to roll out large-scale technology. The next thing is a medical-grade network. Basically what that is it's just really high-speed connections out to the outside. And there's multiples of them where if any one of them goes down, you can always get access and reliably fast access to your technology systems, so you never put your patients at risk. Email consolidation. Linda's and my boss, I'd say at least every other day I have to explain why it's difficult to send out statewide emails and so on. And I try to explain to her because in this regard, we're not a normal department. We actually have 8 separate email systems, and it's even far more complex. They're not even all the same name brand of technology, which even makes it horribly complex and difficult. There's a reason why they're consolidating email in this state, because we had the same problem as suddenly they just picked 5 departments and said, you're one department now. They would have exactly the same problems and issues that we have right now as a department, but we weren't 5 separate departments. We were just a single department that was allowed to operate as though we were 5 or 8 separate departments. The administrative tools are non-clinical tools. The reason that we're going to be rolling something like that out first is the medical grade network will go in phases. I have convinced the powers to be that give us the money and permission to do projects that we can't roll out an EHR, and this is true until we have all those different ways of accessing it. But non-clinical technology, people aren't going to really die if you don't have access, and things like staff scheduling, although it would be a very cumbersome and manual process that we're doing today, we could quickly revert back to it for a short period of time. The top is basically clinical technologies. And what I mean by that are things like telehealth and other technologies where we can depend upon them always being there. And no matter what, you're always going to be able to get to your patient's records and the different technology systems that you need to get access to. So that's the very unpopular answer at the top. That's fiscal year 2015. That's really the earliest that we can expect as a department to undertake rolling out an electronic health record. And I'll let that set in, because people, when they first hear that, are rather disappointed because I know the demand is there and you want it now. And, but there really isn't much I can do without that necessary infrastructure in place. So I'm going to walk through these slides really quickly. These are kind of, and I apologize, I kind of described this. This basically just describes the problem of what we face today with the centrally managed employee directory. Straightforward, this is what we're actually doing right this minute, and we'll actually start to see benefit of this shortly in simple things like, Linda, you'll be able to actually look at my Outlook calendar. I don't know why you'd want to, and see if I'm available to actually take it. I'd be welcome if you would delete things off of it. Just small things like that. A single intranet site, just really basic, simple things. But what it really allows us to do is roll out large-scale technology that makes this as a dependency. So here's the way we are today. That's what we're trying to work towards. And this is kind of that neighborhood then with those necessary infrastructure in place. So then we can actually go places like the grocery store and places like that. I'm going to walk very quickly through this because I really want to get to the end where I'm describing kind of your part of this. Basically highlights what I was talking about. I'll get to the graphic. That's us today. We have a single point. Notice it's a skinny line, and that's supposed to mean that it's a low-speed connection. If we have technology outside of here and you lose that connection, I always use the analogy. I live in West Sacramento, and there's very few bridges that go from Sacramento into West Sacramento. And I always describe the problem. If you have a single bridge, and that's how you go to and from work, and that bridge is out, either you're not coming to work or you're not going home, one of the two. And it's an appropriate analogy for the way right now we would be able to access technology. This is what we're attempting to do right now. We have funding and project approval to do the first top arrow, and we are going forward right now and seeking funding and a project approval for the secondary and the tertiary, the third connection. That way, if you lose one of those bridges, you've got two more. You lose two of them, you have one more. The odds of us losing all three of them will be very difficult because we'll really drive to eliminate as much as possible those single points of failure. Email consolidation, this is kind of a no-brainer. I'm not going to really go too deep into this. One thing that will come out of this is we would all have a dsh.ca.gov email address, and our distribution list and our global list would be far more accurate and up-to-date and user-friendly. This is a little bit staff scheduling. Right now, people aren't getting projects approved unless they pay for themselves or people are dying. So this explains PDAS and then staff scheduling. Staff scheduling, the projected savings that I've disclosed, I believe are about half of what we can probably actually achieve. So they're very much in support of us moving forward with this because of the efficiencies. Some of the downstream things that I see that we can benefit is we're going to have this centralized place where all these technologies are going to dump their data. And so you're going to have like duress alarm data, the incident report data, you'll have your pharmacy data, you'll have your lab data, and you'll have your staff scheduling data. And when you have, let's say, a specific unit at a hospital that suddenly has a spike in violent attacks on staff, you can actually, for the very first time, you'll start to do analysis because you'll have all of these data sources that are normally siloed, where you can actually start looking for causes. Are we prescribing something different to this specific unit or patients? Are we doing too much overtime and the employees are tired and not as aware of their surroundings and so on? So it's predictive analytics is what it's called. It's called a enterprise risk management system where we can actually start looking at problems we have, and then as we implement something, we can actually watch to see, did that thing that we're implementing actually have the effect that we wanted. This actually started with the UCs here in California did this, and it was an accident. They actually had this techie person who put two sources of really disparate data into a single database, and it was their incident data for accidents and then their learning management system. And somebody was looking at it and they said, well, I want to see, we mandate everybody to have safety training, and I want to see if that has any correlation to the hospitals and campuses that are actually having all the accidents. And it did. They actually showed that the hospitals and colleges that had the greatest percentage of compliance and safety training also had the lowest number of accidents with things like forklifts, pallet drivers, and the severity of the accidents were considerably less. And as a result, they saw that workman's comp claims and the cost associated with that was also considerably less. So somebody said, well, let's see what happens when we mandate compliance, which they had always done that, but nobody was actually paying attention, I guess. And they said, in the next 60 days, we want everybody to be in compliance with the safety training, and they did that. And then they started to watch the data, and immediately they started to see a downturn, and it brought them in line with all of the other hospitals and UC campuses. And for the first time, they realized that there was a direct correlation between these different sources of data. people started then coming in from all the different departments and saying, well, do me, do me, do me, and, you know, started putting all this data. And I saw their system, and we've already procured technologies in the past year that will allow us as a department to do exactly the same thing, but actually better. And we're currently right now working on the first pilot project where we're pulling any source of data we can get about pharmacy into a single repository. This is all the hospitals, all the prescribing data, as well as all of the procurement data from the Department of General Services. And for the very first time, we'll actually be able to run analysis and reports on statewide, us as a department, pharmacy operations, and so on. And so, you know, we'll end up pulling into this all the different sources of data. PDAS, that's the duress alarm system, all the lab systems, anything will end up in this, and there'll be this data universe. And what it'll allow you to do is, instead of you having to go into each of these standalone technologies and learn how to run the reports in those systems, you'll just go to a single place. It'll be a web-based place. We teach you one time how to access that report area, and then you'll be able to run reports on all of our technologies from that single place. I really kind of got off track on assist, didn't I? So, sorry. Kind of describes some of the problems we're trying to fix. This project right now, we have made it. We have a feasibility study that's been approved. It's in the governor's proposed budget. In the next couple of weeks, I've got to do the first Senate and Assembly budget hearings where I get up and testify about why we need this. We're very, very close, I believe, to gaining the project approval where we would start to proceed this next fiscal year, sometime around July to November, depending on when a budget is signed. And then this would be a statewide rollout that would go hospital by hospital moving forward. We don't have a product selected. We would actually go through that based on our business requirements. But I actually have seen demonstrations now. Technology has really come a long ways. And for the very first time, I saw a system that the VA was deploying at some of their hospitals that was off-the-shelf technology that had no customization at all. And we tried to stump them with anything, all of our different bargaining units and rules and requirements. And out of the box, just through configuration, it could actually do everything that we could throw at them. And that's huge. And so I'm very hopeful that we'll actually get a good solution for us. And like PDAS, this will be something that probably in the long run touches all of us, you know, and makes it far easier to figure out when you're supposed to be at work. Imagine being able to look at your calendar on your mobile phone. You know, I'm not saying I'm going to do that. I'm just saying imagine that. No, I'm kidding. But there's probably no reason why we probably couldn't do that. So these are some of the other things that we're doing. You know, we're doing the personal duress alarm, Forefront Identity Manager. I just threw that in there because it sounds kind of cool and important. Sorry. But it's actually one of the technologies tied to that centralized employee directory. Footprints, Consolidated Service Desk. I have, throughout my own organization, 8 different help desk ticketing systems that don't speak to each other. And we've procured and are deploying a single system statewide, which will allow you to actually either call the service desk or enter in your own tickets through a web interface and then track their progress and receive email updates and alerts on them. But I have very different IT operations at each hospital, different challenges and problems, and it's very difficult to try to get additional staffing approved through the state without having all of the data that I need to be able to successfully sell that and defend that. We are the worst staffed IT organization in the state of California. There's only one worse, and they're actually in our own agency, and that's Disabilities DDS. And so I periodically, they're in the same building as me, and whenever I want to feel better about myself and my job, I just go spend time with them. And I always come back and I'm like, wow, things are pretty good here, So I'll make sure not to show this video to them. I don't want them to think that I think poorly of them. I feel for them, though. Lippincott and the project portfolio, eventually here in the next couple months, you'll have a website that you can go to, and you'll be able to see a link to every single project that we're running statewide, and you can go in and actually watch the updates and progress, including the duress alarm projects that are occurring right now at Metro and Patton and closing out at Napa. You guys, we start with you, I believe, next October, so it's coming. That project is going to drive your wireless access. At Napa, in the secure treatment area, 70 acres, we deployed 1,500 wireless access points. And who has wireless at home? Anybody? Okay, well, so that little router that they give you, these are industrial grade versions of that. We deployed 1,500 of them in the secure treatment area. So there is no place that you can stand in the STA there where you're not seen by at least 3. And so for the very first time then, you'll be able to use technology like this. This is a Windows 8 tablet. I'm not an individual who's really impressed by new gadgets and things like that. And a guy I know at Dell came in and handed me one of these and said, take a look at this for a few days and tell me what you think of it. And I did. And I was really ticked off because when I gave it back to him, I thought, how do I get this procurement past my wife without her knowing it? Because I suddenly realized that it was a true leap forward in technology for us. This actually has a full-blown version of Microsoft Office on it. Very quickly now, I've given up my laptop. I was carrying around an Android tablet. I've given that up. I now have a what I would call a human-sized mobile phone. I used to have a huge mobile phone that I could actually block out my head, and I have a fairly large head, and I admit that. And but it was huge, and my staff used to make fun of me all the time with it, sending me graphs, of people walking. It was about this size, actually. So the only thing that it was good for is I kept on having, as I would go places dressed like this, it was this big bulk in my jacket. And I had people that would say, have a good day, officer. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And I suddenly realized they thought I was a cop, with carrying around a gun. They didn't realize it was my cell phone. But I've got a docking station, and it's replaced my desktop computer. So for the very first time, it's literally bridged all those technologies into a signal technology. And, we're a department of about 12,000 staff. We only have 7,000 computers statewide. So, this is, I go to Kaiser and, I see that hardwired workstation that my practitioner seems to be glued to instead of paying attention, to me. Not that I really want them to pay attention to me because I never go there. And my wife regularly, anytime I have an ailment, will say, there are these skilled and educated people that you can go see that could fix this ailment that you have. So I stopped telling my wife anytime I stub my toe or now actually break parts of my body and stuff. But sorry, joking. So this will allow you actually to be in front of a patient anywhere and actually get access to your electronic health record. I want to show you real quick what's up on screen right now. I talked about the receivership, and I went recently, and the receivership has undertaken an electronic health record project, and they are getting ready to award a contract. I believe it's for the Cerner technology, which is one of the better that are available, how this impacts us. Every single time I go to the California Technology Agency, the Department of Finance, and I ask for something, they're like, well, they're doing something like that at CDCR and the receiver. Just go use what they're doing. And so now whenever I look at a need we have, I'm like, oh, crap, how do I address that? And so basically in this, what the receiver is doing, and their CIO is a friend of mine, and she said that they wrote into the contract basically language that will allow us to, without doing a procurement, use the same contract, get the economy of licensing as a larger enterprise, but then have our own dedicated implementation just for DSH. DDS and others have been asked to look at this. So it could mean very good things for us if they do it well, and it could be very bad things for us if they don't do it well. I've tried to explain to people that they're ambulatory care. They're basically a Med7 clinic where we're actually an inpatient long-term care hospital. They get that. And so also you'll see that what's outside of the red dotted lines, they've spent a lot of money on lab, pharmacy, and radiology. And so that's not really within the scope, which actually allows us then to go our way on those types of technologies. So here's the part why I actually wanted to come here. So the first, I showed you what we're doing and kind of explained the why we're doing it. For a very long time, we as a department, no one's ever come to you and said, every single day that you make decisions just as a standalone hospital, you don't realize that that's another day that you've put between you and the ability of actually getting enterprise technologies. You may not have thought it. It seemed like a lot of freedom, but sometimes doing things that are not necessarily the best thing may seem kind of like freedom, but it's really not. And so the next 2 years, my staff are really working very hard to roll out this necessary infrastructure. And that's a minimal amount of time for the amount of change that we are faced as a department. And I'm not talking about technology. I'm talking about basically you. I will have problems successfully integrating a pharmacy technology, a single name brand pharmacy technology with an electronic health record. That will be a challenge. There is a chance I will fail doing that. I cannot and will not undertake, or would never advise us to undertake, trying to do that 8 separate times. That's what we're facing today. Not picking on pharmacy, it's just been a recent focus of mine. We're this way everywhere. We have capitalized on the word unique to an extent that, I apologize, is to the point of being ridiculous. And someone said to me recently, and I think that we should replace the I am unique, we are unique t-shirts with, we've removed the word unique from our vocabulary, and I think that that's a better approach. I have spoken to different leadership groups in the clinical space, and I've said the following. I need you to start working amongst yourself, the hospitals, in the leadership role, bringing your people that work for you together, and start working with me to establish standards in the existing technologies that you have today, like in laboratory, pharmacy, radiology. And I'm not talking about we immediately then just part and parcel go and replace these things out. I have both the regulatory and the statutory authority for providing oversight and approval for all of our technology procurements. I will not approve procurements that are not in compliance with some sort of a standard. I can't. In good faith, my job is to take care of you all, to provide you what you basically on a daily basis I hear, people begging me for. I know how to do this. I've done this before. There's nothing that I'm doing right now that is new or original. These are things that I have fixed already and I know how to do those. So I'm telling you that your part in this is reaching out to the other hospitals, working as a system, basically to help make it where we have a much greater chance at taking on these large projects, these large changes. Looking for as much as we possibly can uniformity. I understand that each of the hospitals has variations in their missions that drive, but I am adamantly convinced that if you look at side by side, that is not the majority. You would be able to find that there is the potential for more commonality in your operations across the board. I get it that nobody wants to manage a Subway sandwich shop. And I use that as an analogy because, well, one, I eat there all the time. And every one that I go into might be a little bit bigger or smaller, be in a good or a bad neighborhood, or may not be as clean as the other ones that I've been into. But the menu's the same, the pricing are the same, how I order my food, what I order, it's all exactly the same. It doesn't seem like it would be a very fun place to work if you were really seeking creativity in your job. And I'm not telling you to expunge creativity. I'm telling you that I'm not going to force the what you decide to do. I'm not going to dictate that to you, meaning that people keep on saying, well, if you're not going to do the VA system, what are you going to make us do? That's really what they're asking. What I'm going to make you do is work together to make decisions. And then you give me your direction of what you're actually asking me to give you. And then my role in that is basically to get the money and the approval, successfully roll that out, and then to make sure that it's supportable, from that point forward. That's my goal, my role. I take that above all, that I'm supposed to be doing. So that is, I know in a lot of the hospitals, when I initially kind of give this speech, it's not immediately a very popular speech and so on. But I'm not telling you anything that if you sit down and you just start thinking this through, that eventually you'll come to the same conclusions. So based on that statement that I made at the beginning, where I would never get the money or the project approval to roll out a separate electronic health record for each hospital, keeping that in mind, and the analogy of me rolling it out to 5 or 8 separate owned hospitals, apply those analogies to us. And what that tells you is, if you agree with me that you would be virtually impossible, most likely not successful to take on a project like that, that's literally where we are today. So the reason I'm doing this and the reason I'm not candy coating this is I need you to not waste a single day. You need to start working to make these changes now, because the likelihood of you making all of this change by the time I can actually be ready to start rolling out technology, it's highly unlikely that you'll have completed everything. Even if you started right this minute and worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you wouldn't be able to get it done. So, but it is incumbent upon us to try to undertake and do what we can. You need to get over that immediate resistance to this and give it the benefit of the doubt and actually start going through the process of looking at, your brothers and sisters at the other hospitals, seeing what their work is, and then looking for those commonalities and where you can start to have that common practice across the board, where all that's left then is the things that actually absolutely are unique. So that's your role in this. And to be honest with you, that's why I drove here today. And why I didn't want to do that as a WebEx, because I wanted to deliver that in person. And I wanted you to understand why that is so critical and important to us as a department. So that being said, I can take questions. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So basically, I'll explain. We're undertaking an enormous amount of work. Changing the employee directory in particular affects every single existing application system in-house today. Every single one of them needs to be modified. We are also rolling forward a lot of enterprise technology, application technology that will start being rolled out to the hospitals, and actually shortly. We are horribly understaffed. As a result, we've taken the step where we are modifying, and we'll look at modifying existing systems that are there today. We are not undertaking new application development and developing standalone systems regardless of the technology, whether it's Microsoft Access or not. And I'd be happy to talk with you more about it, offline and so on. But I'm not trying to be a bureaucrat or not understand the needs. I am at a point right now where we've said yes to so much that we're responsible for this volume of work. We're saturated at this point as a department. I'm having to tell people like Linda's and my boss no, which, trust me, is probably one of the more difficult challenges I face in my day-to-day job. And so, but I do this. So the other day, the COAC pharmacy representative came to me and said, I have a problem. I have pharmacists all over the state that do pharmacy notes on a patient, and I need a new standalone dedicated application system that allows them to key data enter in this information, and then it's available to the clinical staff and the other pharmacists. And she said, this is a small and simple project. And I tried to be polite and say, just because you use those two words in that statement doesn't actually make that a true statement. I have actually rolled out large-scale pharmacy systems, and they're anything but small and simple. But then I came back and I basically said, we are rolling out a department-wide document management solution. And this will actually be one of the very first modules within an electronic health record. And we're actually procuring the technology right this moment. A small fledgling beginning, and then we'll start adding and building upon that. What I explained to her was, I could give you an Adobe form that your pharmacist could fill this out, and then they could save it directly to an electronic patient record folder that then would actually meet your business needs. So what I'm getting at is, I know all the different technologies that are coming in. I'd be okay with looking at a way where we could do it as a low-hanging fruit, and maybe not do it exactly as you're describing it to me as the solution. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And maybe we can talk a little bit after. I just am looking for solutions before the technology gets
right.
How we can keep our hospital running smoothly.
Understand. And I'll work with you on that. There's other ways that we can accomplish it. So there was a gentleman back here. Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Well, it's what they selected. It's not, right now we're just kind of sitting in the wings and watching. I wouldn't take it to the bank that that's something that, we're going to automatically do here. So we're also, too, God bless you, the earliest that they would be done with their project, they say 2015. I kind of doubt that, but not in a bad way. I just understand what it is to roll out projects there.
So we're going to be able to watch their progress and know what works and what doesn't, if that makes sense. So right now, to be honest with you, when it comes to an EHR technology, I don't have a selected name brand in my head. You know, the VA system, it's possible. Cerner, it's possible. You know, I look at it as, and I always say it's, you know, here's a bucket, you know, let's put something in that bucket. You know, I'm not going to dictate to you what it is. The problem in this case is I hope if they're successful that it actually is a very good system for them and it works, you know, very well. I'm familiar with Epic. I'm familiar with Vista, the VA system. Not as familiar with Cerner, but I've run all of the reports and analysis comparing them to their peers and things like that. So it'd be kind of cool to see a laboratory of it in our own backyard. What do you mean? This is a project that I described that they're doing within CDCR right now. I'm saying that when we're ready to go forward and if they've been successful, the likelihood of me going forward and saying, well, we're not going to use that, we want to use this over here instead, is not even zero. I would put it in the negative numbers. There is one thing that I do know how to do, and I've been very successful in my career getting project approved and funded. That's an argument that would be virtually impossible for me to successfully do. So as a result, I'm very, very hopeful that they're like really, really successful, which would be good for us, or they're really, and I shouldn't say this, really, really not successful, which would then give us some freedom, if that makes sense. The cool thing is, since they're not focusing on things like, you know, the different allied health services of pharmacy, lab, radiology, and other things like that, we do have some then freedom as a department to select technologies in those areas. But what I'm starting to tell those groups is we would select a single technology in each of those areas to serve us from a statewide perspective. Does that answer your question? The state is under an extreme amount of pressure because of the economic environment to seek economy of scale and to really see the state for the very first time as an enterprise. So they're really looking, when you deploy X technology here, if it's applicable to other places that have a similar mission, they want those, that is the very first thing then they expect me to analyze. So as an example, CDCR and the receiver has rolled out a staff scheduling system. There's no way that I would be allowed to do a procurement of a technology without being able to exhibit that I've done my due diligence and looked at their solution, and have either realized that it would be an excellent fit for us, or if not, have been able to successfully convince oversight entities why it would not. Now, I've been successful on that so far because it's dependent upon another technology at CDCR that the receiver is about the same number of staff as us, and if we were to roll out that technology that supports that scheduling system, it took 1.5 years and cost us $30 million. They're not going to let us spend that just to get a staff scheduling system. So as a result, it's given us some room then to pick something that's maybe far more applicable in a clinical space, in my opinion, instead of something that's applicable in a correctional space, which is where even in the receivership, a lot of their technologies are, you know, they buy things that have been successfully used in prisons, you know. And CDCR really drives that. And I understand both of those organizations fairly well. It doesn't make sense to me, but I guess I understand them. Yes. I've been kind of using the carrot, you know, and what I've been telling specific groups that I've been getting in front of is whoever is more ready is where I'm going to focus my attention. So it's kind of like a little bit of a competition or a race then. But, if it helps get the job done, so be it. So I don't know, maybe the pharmacist will be far readier than others and so on. So wherever I see that I choose the easier road, the road where I believe that I'm going to actually be able to do something for you successfully instead of being another headline as to why we failed. So Donna was asking the question about continuity of care between integrating the technology at CDCR and us. So the document management solution that we have selected is the same exact technology that CDCR I bought there, and I also bought it at the receiver, and LA County bought. And it is, luckily, it truly is the number one in its market space, so it's kind of a no-brainer. But always in the back of my head is, that would be a huge accomplishment with those four entities, including us, of having that document handoff between LA County and they're starting to do that now at CDCR. And so as an example, at the receivership, when you have an inmate who's traversing from LA County if they've done lab work and workup on that individual, they're passing that to the receivership where they're not having to do duplicate. And it's a huge savings, And so we're already right now having the initial discussions with CDCR where they're allowing like our MDO and SOCP people. We'll have a pick list of every single time we want records. Their HIM staff will go pull a specific list that we've set up in advance and place it in an electronic repository of PDFs that then our people can go in through a web browser and securely get to without having to actually initially go to that prison, which will save us a lot of travel time and so on. And the next step is then, if once we have the same exact technology in place, can we make that request electronically and then just make the record traverse across, between the technologies? Yes. So a lot of the times when you hear me talking about uniformity and, standards and things like that, this is the primary driver. Interoperability. If I can provide you technologies where you can get at records for this individual from them being at CDCR or from one of our own hospitals, that's huge continuity of care and would be a huge boon to us. The document management solution that we're procuring right now will start being available initially by the end of summer. So, and my staff have warned me to shut up about that and quit saying that, because they're like, what are you doing? Because do you realize there's not a business problem that's presented to us that this wouldn't potentially solve in some manner? And so very shortly, we'll have Dr. Broderick and others who are doing like the in-processing assessments. Those assessments would be sitting in a patient record that would be available to whoever in our department needs to have access to it for the very first time. It's getting to the point where I've requested now a position. I need to have a dedicated HIM person, because literally everything I'm doing right this point, I need to have someone who can interface with all the HIM people out in the hospitals and make sure that I'm doing something that'll actually work there and so on. So in very short order, you'll be able to save an Adobe form, send a Microsoft Office document, scan a copier scanner directly into an electronic folder that is a patient record. And so we're like this close from being able to do that. And so, there's also within that technology, you can implement business rules of routing, review, approval, things like that. And, that's pretty high-end functionality when it comes to technology. Adobe Lifecycle? No, but it does. When I use the word or term Adobe Forms, Adobe Lifecycle Forms are Adobe Forms on steroids, in a good way. And where you don't have to do any type of testing and end up on the television and speaking to Oprah. So sometimes my humor, I apologize, has a tendency of, it sounds really good in my head, and I laugh. So sorry. We need to learn how to make decisions. And I've picked forms for the department because it's something within my delegation to procure and do without having external oversight organizations looking over our shoulders. And trust me, I have that a lot. So these forms, for the very first time, you'll be able to have a form, and if it is not the latest and approved version of it, if you try to open it and fill out a new instance, it'll actually tell you that. And it'll actually say this is no longer the most current. Please click on this link, and it'll automatically download a new version of that form. The other thing is you can actually fill out this form, and instead of just saving it as a PDF, you can actually save it to a database. You could save it directly to this document management solution. It is a very, very dynamic technology. It's something now that we already own. We're starting to make a lot of headway in this area. I know that COAC is working with the hospitals to identify and systematically go through these forms. Now, when they do forms, I know that some hospitals and even units may have greater requirements. The reality of it is, though, and Donna, you need consistent and accessible data, and we need that on a department level. The only way that we can do that, and forms are key to this, is having a single form for every single thing that we do. Our forms, luckily with this technology, are very dynamic, meaning that it can actually present a different number of fields and types of fields based on your business focus. So it's a very, very advanced technology that we're in the process right this minute of deploying. And it's something, I've been looking for technologies that we can deploy inside of our environment that help us get the benefits of having things like an EHR downstream, today. Yes. Let's use Lippincott, nursing procedures. Every single hospital has different nursing procedures across the board. There are things that can be unique to each of the hospitals, but I believe when you start looking at the nursing procedures now that are in the Lippincott portal, you can start finding commonality across the board. That's what I'm basically talking about. You do a specific task this way. They do a specific task this way. You work together to realize that there's nothing in regs, there's nothing in law, there's nothing in your physical plant that actually makes you do that, other than Darwinian theory, where you're on two different islands and you've both evolved in very different ways. And that's basically what I'm talking about. And that's a very loose analogy. When I talk to, like the other day, the pharmacy directors, I'm just talking about things like medication dispensing cabinets, having a single standard of technology statewide. So then as they replace out their technologies, they're moving towards this where it is interoperable. It is a foregone conclusion that we can actually get data from hospital A and it'll be the same data as hospital B in format, and we can actually start doing analysis and looking at basically, how do we deliver better care? Does that make sense? And so when I say that I don't think that you can get this done, what I'm saying is it is such a task of enormity that I don't want you to waste any more time. Okay, maybe we really haven't been wasting time purposely. That's maybe not the best way of saying it, but we cannot lose days ahead of us. It would make it so far easier for us to roll out the things that I'm trying to roll out to you in the future if there is some greater measurable of uniformity within our department. That's what I'm asking you for. Thank you all.
Thank you all for staying the extra time today. I think it was very worthwhile, and have a good day.